Hi friends, it's Becky, and today I have two full set tutorials that I'm going to be sharing with you today. The first is going to be a full set, and by full set I mean necklace, bracelet, earrings, and a ring, because this is full set February. And I'll be using the bargain bead box for January 2025, or 26. It is the second month of the year, Becky. Anyway, January 2026, this was the Arctic Aurora bargain bead box. And then the second set, I will be using the companion bundle. Now, the companion bundles are not part of the bead subscription. They are a limited quantity bundle that is available at Beadbox Bargains at certain points during the month. They do sell out very quickly, but I was very happy to get this. And if you missed our unboxings for it, I will put it in the description below. Some of the items they actually will list extras for, and there might be some of these available on their site now. So I'm going to do that later. Again, like I said, we're going to do two different full sets. The first one is with the bargain bead box. So I've already pulled out some beads and I've gotten started with the design. I'm going to show you how to make the link that I'm using. Then we will put the necklace together. I'll show you how to do a clasp, and I'm going to do the end of a clasp with the wire that I'm using with this bead. And I'm using these sort of backlit nuggets. We're going to use the pave beads. We've got some of the gemstones, the Malaysia jade, that we're also using for this. Then for the bracelet, I'm going to be using the same beads and the same link style, but we're going to do our clasp a little bit different for that one. So I'll show you how to do that with that. And then for the earrings, I'm going to use a similar link style, but there's going to be a little bit difference with that. And these sparkly ball beads, they're a little bit lighter, so they won't pull down on my ears so much. But they give the same kind of glowy effect that you get with these larger beads, so that's why I'm using them for earrings. I've got a head pin and an ear wire that we'll be using for the earrings, and I'll demonstrate that after we do the bracelet. And after we do all of those, I'm going to be pulling out my ring mandrel and making a ring with this chonky boy. So the tools that I'm going to be using are a 6-step bail making plier, because I'm using a small loop and a large loop on my links, chain nose pliers, and flush cutters. And then when we get to the rings, I'm going to pull out a couple of extra tools. One is my bracelet mandrel, and the other is my nylon tipped hammer. So let's get the link materials out here. I am using 18 gauge wire for this. You can use 20, but I find 18 gauge kind of holds better as far as this goes when you've got the large loop. It is a wrapped loop, so it is more secure than a simple loop, but I am doing a combination of wrapped loop and simple loop on these links, because the simple loop on the end with the smaller loop, it's going to be easier to put everything together doing it that way. So I will demonstrate one link with this, then we'll make a closure, and I'll show you how to put together one end of the necklace. I've already got one side all created, and I am going to be using this pendant. This pendant is actually sort of the inspiration for the rest of the piece. I'm going to remove this bail though, because I'm not going to be using it as part of this necklace, but I love the airiness of this with the space between the shell at the center and the outside edges here. So I'm going to be trying to still get that light, airy feeling. That's why I went for this style of link, just to get that airy feeling with this. We're going to get it happening with this one as well. That's why I left the big loops on for that. And we're going to try and see if we can mimic that with our ring as well. So let's get some of these guys out of the way and take a look at what we've got. For each side of the necklace, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 of my large nuggety beads, 3 pave beads, and 1 of the Malaysia jade beads. So we're going to make a regular link with this pave bead, since I've already got 3 of these done. And this last one, instead of that being a link, it's going to be a hook for a closure, and I'll show you how to do that. Let's get our chain nose pliers out here and get this bail off. I'm hoping this isn't soldered. If it is soldered, then we will just break it. I'm hoping I can just maybe unpinch it. Okay. So it looks like I am going, there we go. There we go. So now I've got the bail removed. I can go ahead and use this just like that. And now I've got my 18 gauge wire. I'm just going to warm it up a little bit with my hands. It's already pretty straight from the last time I straightened it out. If it's a little kinked or a little too bent, you can try to straighten it out by bending it around one finger and then bending it around the other. I find that takes a lot of the kinks out, but especially with the sort of thicker gauge wires like 16 gauge, you might be better served with some nylon jaw pliers to do that. I like to work off the spool, so I'm going to put my bead on the spool, let it drop down out of the way. And then right here at the end, it's already cut flush. If it wasn't, then you could cut it with your flush cutters. I'm going to make my simple loop, and my simple loops for this design are using the second smallest loop on my bail making pliers. So I just put the end of the wire right there and then turn it and keep turning it until it touches the other end. And while I've got that on there, I'm going to swing around the other end to just below it and give it a little bit of a bend back. And that's going to give me kind of a centered loop. And I often will need to close the loop, give it a little smush with my chain nose pliers. That helps work hard in that loop. Then once I've got that on there, for small loops, when I do a wrapped loop, I'll measure about 2.5 fingers down from where the end of my bead is. But because this is a larger loop, I'm going to need more real estate, more of that. So I'm just going to put a little bit of space between my fingers and measure down at the bottom of my 3 fingers like that. So that's going to give me a little extra space, a little extra wiggle room for wrapping that loop. And I forget which. Okay, yes, I remembered which one it is. All right, so what I'm going to want to do with this is I'm going to want my loops to be perpendicular to each other. Now, if I bent this away from me while this was flat sideways like that, it would make parallel loops. So if I turn it so that the round part is looking right at me and I bent it back away from me, then it's going to give me a parallel or a perpendicular loop, which is what I want. But I'm going to do that bending with the pliers that I'm using. These are my 6-step bell making pliers. I'm going to put the back end towards the back. That is not the side that I'm going to be wrapping around. I'm going to be wrapping around this 4th step, so it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the 3rd step from the end, 1, 2, 3. This middle one, so it's not the 3rd one down, it's the 4th one down. So I've got that back there. I'm going to bend that with the pliers. That's going to leave a little bit of space there between the bead and that bend for wrapping. Bring this around the top, open up my bail making pliers, rotate it so that I'm still holding it, and then we're going to cross that over like that. And that makes my loop. Now I'm going to hold on to that loop with my chain nose pliers. We're going to bend around the neck of the wire. Now you can hold this with some pliers and then grab a second set of pliers to hold or to do the wrapping with, and I actually did that for most of these because it was just a little less leverage than I wanted there to be. I'm just double checking that I've got this at a parallel state or perpendicular state. They need to cross, not go like this. And now I've got my link done. Now, let's make my hook, because if you'll notice here at the end of this necklace, there's a big loop right there. And I'm going to make a hook that goes into it that's going to be part of this on the end of the chain for this. So let's make that hook. It's going to go into the loop that we've got. And I'm going to do the same start for this. Make sure we're cut flush. There we go. Put my bead on and make a simple loop on this end, because it's the end that is not the big loop that I'm going to be making my hook on. Alright, and now for this, I'm going to go ahead and do that same amount of wire right there. And then I need this to sort of bead stopper itself. So just right here, about the same width as this loop from the top of here, I'm moving this up and I'm going to bend the wire around my smallest loop. And I'm going to keep this bent all the way around, oof, so that it makes a loop-de-loop. Close that loop-de-loop. And actually, I might want this to be parallel to my loop. So see how it's perpendicular? I'm going to twist this so that they're going like that. Yep. Alright, so now I need another loop over here. So I'm using the same size of loop for that. And on this end, I'm going to want this to be about here. So I'm going to snip about a centimeter away from where I want it to end, and then use my round nose pliers to roll up a little loop, or not round nose pliers, my bail making pliers, to roll up a little loop. And I'm using the smallest loop for this one too, so that we don't have the end of the wire hanging on things. Alright, so there's a little bit of space for it to slip into the hook, but it's not going to come out easily. You will have to do that determinedly when you do that. So let me get this squished there, and I'm just gonna give this a good healthy squish in my pliers to help work hard in that loop, or that hook. And that is the closure part for the necklace. So let's start at the bottom and work our way to the top. We're going to have the small loop down, big loop up, small loop down, big loop up. I've got two of those. There we go. It helps to lay them out in the order that you want before you get started putting them together. And I'm going to grab my chain nose pliers, because it is basically just going to be swinging this open like you would a jump ring and then closing it. And this is why I left that loop as a simple loop. It's just to make it so much easier to put all of these guys together. how these are perpendicular to each other with the loops, so that when they're laying straight, all of the large loops are visible. So they all lay the same way when everything is laying straight. Like that. Again, we're keeping it airy, we're keeping it light. And this loop here connects the very last one. And now I can take the loop here at the bottom, open that up, put that through my the hooky part is going to be on my right hand side because it's just a little more fiddly than the loopy part. And this one will be on the left hand side. It'll be left hand as you're wearing it, not as you're looking at it. There we go. So that is our necklace. That's the first part of this project. I'm going to be doing basically the same thing with the very same type of loops for the bracelet. So let's put that one together. But I think with the bracelet, it's going to be just a little bit different for the hooks. So let's put it together and then figure out if it's going to be different or if I'm just, my brain is imagining things or not when we do that. But I love that. I love the chunkiness of it. Alright, so I've got my bracelet guys right here. And we're going to put it together with, again, the loops facing the same direction. Like this, or actually, no, like this. So that the big loop is on the end. There we go. Like that. And then this will be on the end as well. This one's going to have a big loop and a hook on the other end. That's why it's going to be a little bit different from the necklace. So let's get these guys put together, and then we'll make our little hook on the other end and have a bracelet all finished. And I only have the 6 pave beads, so these fantastic, gorgeous Malaysia jade beads are perfect to keep a similar feel or vibe. So sometimes it's funner to use a smaller bead for the bracelet than you did for the necklace. It makes it feel a little more delicate. Alright. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and slide this one on here, even though it's a little bit of a mess down here at the bottom. I don't have as much leverage with this for straightening it out, so I'm going to go ahead and use my chain nose pliers for it. But I do need to hold on to this end while I am straightening it. There you go. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is make my hook first. So I'm going to go the opposite direction as what I ended up doing, where I started with my loop-de-loop and I ended with my little loop. So this time I'm going to start with my little loop. Make my hook. And then do my loop-de-loop here. There we go. Like that. So I've got my little hook all ready to go. Let's smush, smush, smush. Now I can put my that on there, and we're going to make a loop here. The large loop to keep with the same style. Oh, I hooked the wrong end there. I'll have to turn that around. This was all that was left on my spool for that spool. Anyway, I'll have to go get a different spool of wire to continue this. There we go. So we've got a hook. I made it in a different order than I did the first one, but that should show that, you know, you can make the hooks in a different order. You can start with a loop-de-loop and work out, or you can start with this loop up here and loop-de-loop your way to your last bead. This got turned around. I meant to attach the rest of the bracelet to it on the large loop, and I did it with the small loop instead. So let's turn this one around so that it's facing the right way. This is another good reason for simple loops, is that if you make a mistake like that, you can correct it easily. And now I'll take the little loop on this end, attach it to the big loop, which is, you know, the only loop on this one. Now we've got a bracelet that we can get our hooks into. There we go. I think I need to bend this a little bit. It is a very long thing, and sometimes when things are long on a bracelet, it doesn't curve as nicely. Actually, no, this does need to be perpendicular. So let's get all of this and turn it this way. Yeah, that's gonna fit better. And it'll lay better. Sometimes you have to just verify after you're done making things that it actually will fit the way you want it to. Alright, here we go. Because the first way worked. There we go. Yeah, that fits better. That lays better. That is much better. There we go. So again, light, airy, with a few big chunks in between. Now let's get that earring done, because again, the main difference in the link that I made here, and I'm glad I chopped that off there, is that instead of doing perpendicular, I did parallel loops. So let's make our drop first, and our drop is just a head pin with our sparkly bead right here on the end. I am going to bend this across the top because we're going to do a simple loop on it. I'm going to cut all but 1 centimeter of this wire. I'm going to use the smallest loop on these pliers to roll up a simple loop. Okay. Now this one, I've already made a simple loop on this end. You guys watched me do it on twice now on the other one, so I don't think I need to do that again. But do you remember how I was making sure that I had the circle facing me when I bent the wire back to make my big loop? Well, this time I'm going to turn it so that that circle disappears. I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to bend the wire back and then bring it around the top and keep going all the way around. I didn't have enough of a bend, so I'm just going to bend it again. There we go. And hold on to that. And wrap the wire down until it gets to our bead. Snip off the excess. Tuck in that little bit of end right there. Smush this a bit flatter. And then I'm going to take this simple loop and attach it to the big loop on that link I made. And then put my ear wire through the top loop. And that is earrings. Ta-da! Let's make a ring. Now, making a ring with a bead can be pretty simple, pretty easy, but it takes time, it takes practice. And the first year that I did a full set February, it was because I realized that without challenging myself, I just kept avoiding making rings. I didn't know how, I wanted to learn, so I challenged myself to make 2 full sets each week for the month of February. And that's what I did. And at the end of that, I felt much more confident in my ring making abilities. Now I'm finding the middle of this so that I can bend my wire carefully right next to my bead. And I'm bending it down this way. And again, carefully. Like that. And I'm going to grab my mandrel, and I've got some worn away places here on my mandrel, so I know sort of where I want my my ring to be, and it's just because that's where I've done it before. This is a ring that fits here, but it's a little loose. Actually, it fits great there, so if I want it to be, it's usually about here-ish that it works on this finger for that. What is that? Yeah. So, ring mandrel, you can get ring mandrels that are more like this. And actually in this case, that might work best for that have the markings for your ring sizes and grooves and little straight spots that you can rest your bead into while you are working around it. But I like my wooden mandrel, so I'm going to go ahead and use that. It's my buddy, it's my pal. I've been using it for a while. Whoop. where are you going? All right. So I'm going to hold the bead on there with my thumb, cross these wires underneath, like so, till they end up here, ish. And then over here on this end, that's gonna work. Right here on this end, I've taken it off the mandrel. I'm going to hold the wire together, do a little bend, cross over it, keep these two held together while I feed this end through, because I want to wrap it around once and have it going off this way. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Make sure that it isn't crossed weird. There we go. It did, it crossed weird. Come on, this way. What you doing, Bead? I'm putting it back on here to get the size again. All right, right here. So we're going to cross it this way. Hold on. And you notice I'm bending it so that it'll go through. I'm not making a big bend, just enough that we can wrap it around. That's too much of a bend. All right. And now here comes the fun part. See, I want to make sure that they're going in the opposite directions. And then I'm going to just use my thumb to warm it up and bend this around here like that. See, we're keeping that open, airy sort of look that we had with the pendant. It's not going to be exact, but I want to take this and bend it around and make a loop to secure it. Right there. Now, is this pretty? Not super pretty, but it's kind of giving me what I want it to do, what I want it to be. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. It's got kind of a straight part there, so I'm going to work on it with my thumb a little bit more, get my finger underneath it, try to curve it around. See if I can curve this a little bit. Like that. Okay. So now that that's bent over there, hold on to this and that with my thumb. We're going to go through here. Okay, let's double check sizing. Yep, that's about what I wanted it to be. I've got a little bit of a halo there, and I'm going to snip off my excess wire, and then we're going to put it back on the mandrel after we snip off this excess wire and close this loop. Much better. The mandrel is going to give us a little bit of work hardening for this ring. Squeeze that loop closed a little bit better. Alright. And I'm going to hold on to this and grab my hammer. I'm going to say it's stop hammer time. And I'm not hammering the other parts or the rest of it because I don't want to damage the bead. There we go. Similar feels. You've got the little halo, and I kind of like that it's not an exact like circle. It's more of a natural organic shape around that because that's what shape that stone is. So that is my first full set for Full Set February. And like I said, I challenged myself to do at least 2 full sets each week for the entire month, and it's near the end of the week. It's been a long week, my friends. I have had so many things happening this week, so it is. I'm impressed that I got this done at least, but we're gonna do a whole other set, so it'll be 2 all in this video for my Full Set February challenge. And if you wanted to join me in that challenge, if you wanted to challenge yourself to do that, you could do 1 full set. You could do 2 for the entire month. You could do 1 full set with every bead box you get. You could choose what level of challenge you wanted to accept for yourself, just to make a set, to get some practice making rings. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It does not have to be perfect. You can still have a nice big ring without it being you know, everything on that. So you can do that, or if you want to just have your full set be necklace, bracelet, and earrings, that's an acceptable thing. Again, this is, it's up to you. It's a personal challenge. Or if you're somebody who your full set includes a tiara, for instance, you could do that as your full set February. Anyway, so here's our full set for number 1. This was using the Arctic Aurora collection from Bargain Bead Box. And I'm going to clear off my mat, get out some beads, and we're going to do full set number 2 with the Arctic Aurora companion bundle. So I'll meet you right back here with that. Okay, so I'm back and I've got some beads and a plan for my project number 2. And this will be my second Full Set February for the first week of February. Again, It's just a personal challenge that we're doing, but this is using the companion bundle for the bargain bead box that they went ahead and sold from Beadbox Bargains. And for this I'm going to be using some of the tiger eye, the faceted tiger eye that we had in there that's dyed this glorious dark blue color. And then we've got these like peacock iris sort of oval beads and these tube beads as well. I'm going to be using both of those in this design. And I wanted to add a bit of brightness because these are fairly dark beads to begin with, and so I wanted to add some little pops of brightness. So I grabbed these Stardust spacers from the bargain bead box. This didn't come in the companion bundle, and we're going to use those with them. And I am using the shell pendant for this one, and I grabbed both of these little drops that came in here, and we'll do that with the earrings. For the earrings, I've got some ear wires over here, and I'm just going to move these guys over there with the ear wires. I grabbed a couple of the Super Hold magnetic clasps, one for the necklace, one for the bracelet. I've got some little jump rings that we're going to be using with it. I've got some 2x2 crimp tubes that we're going to be using, and I thought for the ring that I would go ahead and do something different, something that I've never done before for this, because that's part of doing a challenge is, you know, challenging yourself, doing something new, doing something unexpected. And so I'm going to be making a ring using some beading wire instead of craft wire. And I'm going to be using some of these tube beads. Again, I set some aside specifically for that, and one of these tiger eye beads. But I want to make sure I've got like the right tiger eye bead, and I think this one might do it because it's got some really cool colors on it. So I'm going to go ahead and set that one aside too. I'll also dig out a few more of these for the strung portion. I did remove the bail off of the pendant because I'm not using it for the strung portion. I'm going to put one of these jump rings on here so that I can string through it though. The tools that I'm going to be using are round nose pliers, chain nose pliers. My favorite way of crimping is using a magical crimper, and then I've got some flush cutters. So that is what I will be using to make this stuff. Because I'm not going to be using craft wire to make my ring, I don't need my mandrel. I can do it without any of that stuff. It'll be a fun little adventure, I think. So let me get this jump ring on here, and then we'll plan out our bead stringing. And I'll probably be doing just the same beading pattern for the bracelet that I do for my necklace. All right. So that's going to be in the center. And I don't think this will go through with that on there. Okay, so we'll have one of these tube beads to start. And then I think what I want to do is have these tiger eye beads, a stardust spacer, one of these guys, another stardust spacer, one of these, and then have a little tube bead after that, just going up and around. All the way along there. Yep, I like that. All right, so I'm going to start stringing along on my beading wire. I'm not going to cut this yet. I'm going to string to the length that I want on one side, and then we'll cut and string the other end, the other length. And that way we don't have to measure it, we don't have to pre-plan it out or make sure they're snuggled too tightly next to each other. And I can string it on without putting this on yet. We'll put that on when we do with the second half. But I can at least start these on now. And once they're on the wire, I'll have a much better idea of what they look like. And and how I feel about it. Yep, I think that will do. So basically I'm just going to be stringing for the rest of this video. If you'd like to skip to finishing this, I'll put chapters in. We started the necklace, I'll put it, and finishing the necklace in there. If you don't want to stay for the entire stringing. In fact, I may go ahead and skip ahead after I finish the first half, just because it can. It'll end up being a very long video, no matter what, but I am trying to be aware of how much time people have to spend in order to get through to the end on most of these videos. That is not taking very long at all to build up, to get some good length. Like, not at all. I'm just going to be repeating this pattern until that end is the length that I want. Oop, I forgot to put my spacer in there. There we go. I bet that is going to be a good length for a bracelet, maybe? Or one more. One more, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's take out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those and save them for the bracelet. Since I'm going to be doing the same beading pattern for the bracelet, this gives me a good chance to figure out how long I want it to be, or how many beads to save for it. So yeah, if I've got 5 of those, and then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the other half, that should give me at least 2 more repeats on this if this is not long enough yet. Okay, so I think 1 more repeat for necklace. I'm losing my spool. Yeah, if I put that back on while I'm stringing, then it'll stay tighter. If I can make my hands work. Oh, maybe not. There we go. Whew. All right. Yeah, like I said, 1 more repeat of this. And I think that's going to be perfect length for me. And I do like a shorter necklace. So, you know, if you wanted it longer or something, you could add another repeat if you're following along. But at this point, I have 6 of the oval beads. And then it's filled in the rest of the way with the other beads. And yeah, this would be way too dark to go with this if I had left off those spacers on there. So I am pretty happy with the way that that is looking right now. Alright, before I do anything, I am going to use a bead stopper here so that I can get the other half of this wire out without spilling these beads all over the place. I do have some, these are other little bits of wire that were left over from other projects. I'll use this one for the bracelet and this one for the ring. Yep. This is going to work out just fine, I think. There we go. These aren't consistently the same size, these little tubes, so when you compare them right next to each other, they might not be super even, like this side to that side, but it'll be close enough for me when I look at it. So I'm going to go ahead and string up the rest of this side, and I will come back and we'll do some crimping and move on to the bracelet. Alright, so we are all done with our stringing for the necklace. In order to finish this up, I'm going to grab a couple of crimp tubes. These are 2x2 crimp tubes. When I use the magical crimper, they're going to make a nice round little beaded ball of crimp. It's my favorite way of crimping because then I don't need a crimp cover. The beading wire that I use also is really durable and very flexible, so it does not need a crimp or a wire guardian, so I can just slide my crimp tube on, put it down there next to the bead, put my wire through. Actually, I can move this up here because I don't have to crimp right next to the bead for my first one. Then I can move the wire and the crimp until I have a decent sized loop. By decent sized, it's going to be big enough that I can put a jump ring through it, but not super big, but also not super tiny. Once I've got that through there, I'm going to take my magical crimpers, and there's this little concavity in there. Make sure that this is centered, then give it a smush, and it smushes down just the corners of that crimp. So it looks like a little ravioli. Turn it at a 90-degree angle, give it another smush. It looks much worse, but then when you go at it from different angles and you go around it like several times and, you know, open it, turn it, open it, turn it. Just keep going around and hitting it from different angles. It's going to smooth out those corners, those sharp corners that you got on that first one. So you get a nice smooth little round ball of crimp that doesn't scratch your skin while you're wearing it. There we go. And I'm going to use a jump ring to attach my clasp to that loop. And that's that finished end there. I'm going to do the same thing to this side. I'm right next to a bead this. I think I'm going to go through that bead. Will this fit twice? Sometimes bead holes don't allow multiple passes. I think that's one of them, so we'll just go next to it. And I don't want this necklace to be stiff. I would like to have some drape. So I'm just going to curl up my beading. That way when I uncurl it, it'll loosen up quite a bit. And now that I've got my loop here, I'm just going to wiggle my fingernail in between my crimp and the bead next to it so that I've got room to get my crimper around the bead and centered. There you go. Nice little round ball of crimp. And there's a lot you can do with like a little piece of wire like this. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to go put it with my other small bits of wire that I keep around for reasons. And I'm going to grab these jump rings. These are little 4mm jump rings, so they'll be unobtrusive. And I'm going to attach, let go, one end of this clasp to my necklace. And then we will attach the other end of this clasp to the necklace. See, it's nice and flowy, it's not stiff. That's why we curled it up before we crimped. I love that. Alright, so now I'm going to be stringing basically the same beading pattern onto this piece of wire here. Going to put a bead stopper on one end, and I believe we decided that was going to be about 5 of these long. So let's do that. Moving that out of the way. And however many of the these table cut ovals you're going to be using, you'll use twice as many of the tiger eye beads if you're doing this beading pattern. And luckily there was a very generous amount of these tiger eye beads in that box, so it was easy to do. Alright. And one reason I'm not crimping at the start is so that I can adjust, I can add or subtract from either end as I go and as I adjust the length. let's check the length after I get this last little repeat on there. And we'll see if I need to keep or remove these tube beads, or maybe add a couple more, or maybe a spacer, I don't know, at the ends. I doubt that an entire extra repeat will be needed for size, but let's just move this out of the way while I'm trying stuff on. Okay, so I think I am going to be taking these guys off of the ends, because you'll recall the clasp is going to take up about an inch if you include the crimp, all of that, about an inch of space. So if I've got about an inch between each of these beads, or a little bit less than that, then that is going to be the perfect size. All right. So let's go ahead and do some crimping. I'm going to be doing exactly the same crimping that I did with the necklace. We put on the crimp, fold the wire back through it, get a appropriately sized loop, and then center the crimp inside the crimper, and then squeeze, 90-degree angle, squeeze, and then just go around and hit it from different angles until it is all smoothed out. You have a nice smooth ball of crimp. And just like with the necklace, I don't want this to be a tight bracelet. So when I crimp this other half, I am going to curl up my bracelet so that we're taking up some slack. And I'm going to have some extra leftover bits of wire that I'm going to use for other things. That's just what we're doing. Make sure we are centered. And I'm going to attach the clasp the same way with this one. Jump rings and a magnetic clasp, just like that. Switch. Magnetic clasps. They're wacky, wacky, wacky fun. Wacky fun, my friends. And let's see if that will work for me. And oh, that's perfect. And I can bend my wrist. It's a little bit looser than this one. This was the one that we made in the with the previous set. But I think it is just right. And it'll look great with this for my set. So let's make an earring or two. And in fact, these earrings will be so easy. It should take us no problem to make both of them. You know what? I'm leaving it on there. I'm not going to mess with that right now. Alright, so I have 2 of these tiger eye beads. I might swap that one out for one that looks a little bit brighter. Oh, there we go. It's close enough to brighter. But we've got these guys here. And let's grab a couple of those and maybe even... No. I feel like that's just too much. It's gonna be too much up top and not enough to balance these little petite dangles. I think that's going to be just right. I've got some ear wires here. And so let me grab this wire that I've got. I've got some 20 gauge wire. This is pewter color. It goes great with the stainless steel stuff. And so we're going to do just a little bit of wire working with this. I've got my chain nose pliers, or sorry, my round nose pliers. And let's go ahead and do some simple loops on these, and I'm going to want simple loops that are perpendicular to each other. And that's just going to make it easier to put it together. It's going to use up less wire than wrapped loops, and it'll keep it a simple design. So I'm going to start with a flush cut end, and then you do not need to grip this hard. Just place it in between both jaws of these pliers with the tip kind of nestled right in there. I'm doing this about 1/3 of the way down my barrel. And I'm just going to roll my loop until the end of my wire hits the back of that. And then I'm going to rotate one of the jaws of my pliers down right below where that hits. Press it in and back. It's just a really small movement like this when you do that. And that just centers that loop so that it's not leaning off in one direction. I like to work hard in my loops by giving it a smush with my chain nose pliers. It also helps straighten it out in case it was like a little wonky or something like that. We take our beads, and this is why I like to work off the spool, because then it minimizes waste. I'm going to measure about 1 finger's width down from the bottom of that bead. Give that a good snip. I'll get to that in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and make my second loop here so that I can get this spool out of the way. And also, we're doing these together. Making both of these at once. Go. 1 finger width down. Remember to cut the wire, not your finger, when you do this. Now that wire is gone. So for this to be a perpendicular loop, I'm going to want to be able to see the circle of the loop. I don't want it to look like a straight line when I'm looking at it like this. I'm going to rest this against that finger, grip both of these, and then you can either use your pliers by putting it against the back like that. This is loose on this end. And then closing the jaws of this. That's going to bend that back. Or you can use your fingers to do the bend if you have enough leverage to be able to bend it right. See, that's not as sharp of a bend, but it'll still work for my purposes. Once it's bent, I like to measure from the bead to about where my fingernail starts. I know from experience that's about 1 centimeter. Your fingers may be different from mine. My sister's fingers are different from mine, so when she measures along the same place, she gets a shorter length of wire. Okay. Again, we're going to work hard in it and straighten this out. And I'm just going to make sure that we are, if I grip both loops, make a cross with it, then it is perpendicular. And we need to cut the other one that I bent with my pliers and roll this loop up. So one of these loops will go with the ear wire, and the other one we're going to swing open like that, like a jump ring. Add our drop to. And then swing it closed. These are simple earrings, but I think that they are lovely, because the drops are doing most of the work with that. Then we've got our ear wires. I'm going to swing that open with my jump ring. Put it onto that loop. Swing it closed. And you could swing open the simple loop that you made on the top of this just as easily. You don't have to do it from the ear wire down. In fact, let's go ahead and do it with this one. And that's kind of the joy of having like a simple loop there, is that you can use either loop to make that connection if you're joining a simple loop to the simple loop. So there's my earrings. They're fairly simple earrings, but they are part of my full set. And now finally the ring. I think I'm going to pick 4 of these and add them to my ring design that I've been kicking around in my head. Alright, I'm also going to need 2 crimps. I'm using one of these tiger eye beads. That's going to be my focal. And then I'm going to also use these 2 beads. It'll be around like the ring part. It'll give it a little bit of structure. And now my wire. I'm going to go through my tiger eye bead, and I've already checked this tiger eye bead can handle this wire twice through it, so this will work this way. But I'm going to pop a spacer on here and then another spacer on the other side, and I'm leaving this long bit. I want to do this close to the end, but not super close to the end, just close-ish to the end of my wire. Close enough that I can maneuver some of this stuff. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my crimp, and I'm going to crimp a sort of closed loop. I want both ends of my wire to be going through the crimp in the same direction, to make a teardrop shape. Let's move this around so that it gets centered. Or move this around so that it gets centered, one or the other. Okay, so like this on that side, I'm going to crimp right here. And then snip off this excess wire. And now I'm going to add a few of these guys onto the wire and then see how far around we can get around a finger. Because it's going to go around like that. Let's see how far around this is. Still have quite a few more to put on here. As I'm measuring, I'm going to want to keep in mind that there's going to be a little bit of space between the end of this and that bead. All right. I'm just checking the size. This isn't finished. I'm going to take it out after. Get this on here. Oh, that might be the right amount of beads. Okay. All right, so to finish this, what we're going to do is put a crimp on here, and then I'm going to pick up one of the stardust beads, go through the tiger eye bead. It shouldn't matter which direction you go, because we're all going to end up the same place at the end of this. Pick up the other stardust bead and then go back through that crimp. All right, let's tighten things up. Let's move things around. going to be perfect. All right. So there's enough room in here to go ahead and crimp this bead. See, you can make your own rings. You don't have to do wire working to make a ring. I've also made rings using beading thread and needles and seed beads. Done that type of ring before. This is new for me, doing it with the beading wire and crimps. There we go. So it's not as big an ostentation as this one is, but it is a sweet little ring, and it looks great with the bracelet that I made, which this is a super old bracelet, so it takes some undoing. But let's take a look at this second full set that I made. This is set number 2 for my challenge, and also my set number 2 for this video. I made a necklace, a bracelet, some earrings, and let me get this guy off my finger, a ring. All right. I'm going to put a link in the description below to Bargain Bead Box. It is one of the best value for money bead boxes out there. You'll also get, as a subscriber, a 30% off coupon that you can use at their sister store, Beadbox Bargains, which is where they usually will list the companion bundles for sale. You have until the 10th of this month to subscribe in order to get the February box. And if you subscribe after that, then you'll get the March box. It is one of our favorite beading boxes on this channel. We both enjoy creating with it, so we both get it. There's a lot of boxes that like, I'll get it, and then Jenny will get it, a different one, and that sort of thing. But this is one of the ones that we both absolutely want to have and love to get. So we're happy to share them with you. Look forward to Jenny's twofer. She's going to be making 2 sets of jewelry as well, using the Bargain Bead Box and the companion bundle. One thing that Jenny likes to do is combine them into the same thing. So she'll use beads from one and beads from the other, and one and findings from the other, and just have a lot of fun putting them all together. And I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you liked what you see, hit the like button. If you want to see more, hit subscribe. And until next time, my friends, happy beading.